Hey everybody, we're back for another segment at the New York City Real Estate Expo. Right now I have the pleasure of being joined by Mr. George from
How
Premier
are you doing?
Homes.
From Premier Homes.
I appreciate you taking the time to come sit down with me.
Definitely, definitely.
I always like to kind of start the segments in a similar way where I like you to give a little bit of a background about yourself and kind of how you started in the business, and then we'll get right into the swing of things.
So my name is George Castro, as you mentioned. I do real estate in both New Jersey and in New York. We're expanding right now, Premier Homes to New York. We're currently in New Jersey. We're one of the biggest companies in New Jersey.
Beautiful.
And we're right now in the middle of a big expansion. I do construction, I do development, and I'm also the owner of the 3,000-seat Ritz Theater in New Jersey, where we do some of the biggest concerts and artists in the world.
Amazing.
So I'm in real estate, I'm in entertainment,
Beautiful.
and I'm a businessman.
That's good to hear. And I also, we kind of, in conversation, you work with your father, I work with my father. I always like to speak about that a little bit, working with family.
Yeah.
I'm so blessed to be around, him on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Did you always work with your father? Or?
My father, I'm 22 years old right now.
God bless
I started
you.
when I was 18, and my father has always been my mentor.
Very nice.
I think it's a blessing to work with
Of course.
parents. There's pros, there's cons, so on and so forth. But for me, it's been a blessing. He's been my mentor. He's a wonderful man, but it's up to us, you and I, because your
up to
father's
us.
also in it, to bring the business to the next level.
Of course. I agree with that.
I'm big with the social media, with the advertising,
Very
with
cool.
the internet, which I would say that generation is probably not as plugged into. But it's up to us to surpass
Of course.
our fathers, our mentors, and
Yep.
bring it to the next level.
Yeah, of course. I started at a young age as well. When I was about 18 or 19, I got into the industry. I tried college. It wasn't for me. So I got right into the mortgage space. And now I turned 30 last week. So
You're still a young guy.
yeah, we're still young. I can't believe you're 22. I mean, going back to then, I feel like the media thing only started, 4 or 5 years ago, and I learned old school, like I told your father. I learned smile and dial, pound the pavement, make your relationships, but the old school way, not the way that the business is in today's day and age. So 4 or 5 years ago, when I realized that shooting content and media, it's a big part of our industry. That's when I realized that, we have to double and triple down on this right now. Like I said to the last couple of people I interviewed, I feel like a lot of people think it's who they know, but it's really who knows you,
That's true.
especially in 2024. So staying consistent with the media, I think it also gives an opportunity to show your referral partners that we're human beings. We're not just what we do every day, and that's mortgages and real estate.
Yeah.
When I started, I have a personal podcast called After Hours.
Right.
If you guys could like and subscribe to that. When I started my podcast about a year and a half ago, it was about life because I feel like people knew Dean already as the mortgage person.
Right.
They know I do mortgages.
Yeah.
They didn't know I had a daughter and my family life. Not that I put so much of my business out for the media to see, but it's nice, and I feel like people like that. They realize that I'm dealing with a human being, somebody I could trust.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a very critical piece of our business. And like your father said, the dinosaurs who don't transition into learning media, they're going to have a tough time going forward. I mean, some people have their book of business, so they'll always be successful.
Yeah.
But I truly believe that putting media into your business, like you said, is so important. That's really what helps you get to the next level.
I agree with you. I think more so in today's day and age, I think social media and media is of the utmost importance.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, I see so many agents on social media with so much potential, Dean. They have so much potential. They're well-spoken. They're smart people.
Yep.
But they probably don't use media the way that they should. And if they knew how to use media the proper way, and this is what your company does, they probably would be stars because of the potential they have.
Yeah, I agree, and I'll tell you why. Because a lot of people, just like anything in life, they get started, and then if they don't see results immediately, they think it doesn't work. But what I truly believe is that with the media, it's not just about getting a deal today or tomorrow. When I connect with a referral partner, when I talk about them coming on my podcast, or I talk about helping them build their brand, they like that you're not taking a salesy approach to building a relationship with them. I'm not just here to ask for your business. I'm here to build a reciprocal relationship. They love the media. So if that's something that I could do to start relationships and build relationships and keep people happy, that's why I do it. It's a tremendous way to connect with other people and to the world, to show you in a different light. Not just by being salesmen, because
Right,
I don't look at us as salesmen.
Right. I agree.
it's a relationship
And it also pays to be good at media.
Exactly.
It pays to be good at it.
Yep.
You see, and I'm speaking on a panel today at 4 p.m. and I'm going to talk about this. You have many people who are very wealthy, very rich. At the end of the day, your wealth is not only your net worth, but it's also your brand.
That's right.
Because your brand is an extension of your wealth.
Of course.
You have many rich people, many wealthy people on the Forbes 400,
Yep.
where if they knew how to build their brand or use social media or media the right way, they would probably be worth double or triple what they're worth today.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, think about it. I mean, years ago when we started in our business, dialing leads and reaching out to people, there's only so many people you could reach out to. Nowadays, you post something on social media, millions of people have access to that. So it's a free tool for information and a way to get you in front of people. And again, I'll say it like I said before, if that's something that's not in your business, I feel like you're going to have a challenge going forward in the years to come. Like I said, people who have their book of business, I'm sure they'll always be successful. But just like the last year or so when rates came up and people had a challenge getting business,
Right.
I truly believe if we didn't start the media a couple of years ago, we'd be less relevant. We would have got less business the last couple of years, and the challenges that we had would have been even more challenging. But because we, a couple of years ago, decided to get ourselves out there, I truly believe that helped us weather the storm during the challenging last 2 or 3 years. It helped us be successful in that market, which is, it's a blessing. So,
Yeah.
yeah, man, I always like to kind of finish up with, and I asked your father a similar question, being young and successful in the business, what's a piece of information that you can give to either an agent or somebody? I look at my business as the real estate industry. What's some tips you can give to somebody who maybe had challenges during that time but didn't stick it through, or, how did you make it through the last couple of years when things were challenging?
Well, first and foremost, I think you have to love what you do.
Yeah.
I know it's a cliche saying, but I think you have to love it. And I have many friends, and they tell me, should I get into this business or should I get into this one? And they may do better in a less so business, so to speak, because they love the business more.
Of course.
When you go through failures and when you go through shortcomings, which if you're going to leave the highest peak, you're going to go through failures and shortcomings, and in our business, a deal falls through. You need to love what you do. And when you love what you do, that allows you to push through. That gives you the drive and the energy. And you will be much better off because you'll be able to reach a much higher pinnacle than you would if you didn't love what you do. So you have to love what you do and you have to think big.
Yeah.
I believe strongly in thinking big. You will never exceed what you want to do. If you want to make $10 million and that's your ultimate goal, you probably won't exceed that.
Yeah, you got to think big.
But if you think much bigger and you do what you have to do and you put in the work in order to reach that goal, I think you'll be much better off. You have to think big.
I truly agree. Yeah, that's our generation. I feel like a lot of us think big, and that's why a lot of, even with like the tech and the media and all these companies that you see these younger people running, they think big. They don't see the sky as the limit. They see that, I can just keep growing this. So, listen, like myself in my business, and I'm sure like yourself in your business, I pivot with the market. When I saw media was an opportunity, we jumped on that opportunity. And when the next thing comes that we see an opportunity to dive into, we're going to take that initiative, because I feel like the people that sit on the sidelines when things get challenging, those are going to be the results you get in every aspect of your life. You're always going to be on the sidelines. So
And you have to be tough because, as you said, in our business, you go up, you go down.
gotta have thick skin.
But you have to have thick skin and you have to be tough.
Of course.
And you don't see who really has thick skin until you're in a situation where you need to demonstrate it. So you need to be tough. I see people, they have a deal, they're going to make $100,000 or $200,000 on the deal. What happens when something goes south? And if
course.
something happens, you have to be tough. You have to have a pipeline. And I think media gives you the backing in order
I truly agree with that.
to continue building your business.
I agree. Well, listen, my friend, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast or on the segment.
Yeah.
I would love to connect more in the future.
Definitely.
You're a gentleman. It's amazing to see young gentlemen like
Thank you. Likewise.
really push the way you're pushing in the industry. So
Thank you. I
pleasure
appreciate
meeting
it.
you.
Likewise.